This is something that a CSO should have in her DNA, right? So to really combine the business case, the business function with the sustainability aspect.
Welcome to the CSO Impact Podcast, where we talk to leaders in sustainability and experts in the ecosystem. We are discussing how we can work in a way that matters to make a positive impact on the planet. I'm your host, Harald Neidhardt, and in this episode, we talk to Nick Heine. He's the Chief Customer Officer and the Chief Sustainability Officer at IntegrityNext, and he's also one of our authors in our book, Leadership on Sustainable Futures. Nick, thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you? And let's dive in right away.
Thank you, Harald. Good. Thank you for having me.
Super cool to have you here on the podcast. And why don't we start talking about you and your role in your company? So it's an interesting company because you're not only leading the sustainability efforts, but the whole company is actually a service provider to a lot of CSOs and a lot of companies who have to deal with their sustainability efforts, especially in the supply chain. So why don't you start us off in telling us a little bit about IntegrityNext, your mission, and what you serve with your services and products?
Thank you, Harald. Yes, right. This is probably a little bit of a special situation. So a CSO typically is a kind of a producing company, like an automotive company or a chemical company. So I work at IntegrityNext. I'm also co-founder of IntegrityNext, which is a supply chain sustainability platform with 2 million companies with their sustainability and ESG profiles on the platform. So companies that have to comply with ESG and sustainability regulatory, companies that want to understand their sustainability impact and improve it, like reducing carbon emissions, they become a customer, they work with our platform and understand the sustainability of their supply chain and business partners via our platform. So this is what we do. And in this sense, we have I have kind of a double role as a CSO and Chief Customer Officer.
So IntegrityNext is a service provider, as you just mentioned. Now, tell us a little bit about your specific role at IntegrityNext.
Yeah. So as you mentioned in the introduction, I am a Chief Customer Officer, and at the same time, I am a CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer. So as I said, we have that platform with like 2 million companies, which are customers and suppliers on that platform. And my role as Chief Customer Officer understands all these suppliers and customers as clients. This is what my primary role is. And when we thought about where to put the CSO role, for us it was important to understand, okay, where can we have the most impact? And obviously, this is our network of customers and suppliers. And this is why we decided to actually position the role of the CSO where the customers and clients are. And this is why we combined it this way.
That's a new way. And I think it's great to have this combination. Now, how did you actually get into this role? What was your journey?
Right. So I'm actually since over 20 years now in procurement and supply chain. In my last role at IBM, I was working on supply chain insights. So really dedicating to all what's happening in a supply chain and then procurement function. I mean, I always thought about sustainability. It always has been an important topic to me. I grew up in the 80s, and I always tend to say that was kind of the first sustainability wave in Germany. I always had this in mind. And then a couple of years back, I looked at what the importance and the functionality of supply chains and the procurement function. And I thought that, well, this is actually, if you want to have a good lever on sustainability in the economy, then you really have to work at this spot, at the supply chain and with the procurement function, because there companies spend millions and billions of euros and US dollars, and they can make a decision if they spend it for sustainable companies or for non-sustainable companies. And they also affect the quality of life and work of others, maybe in the global south. So this was kind of the the thing that I saw, and then we started to found a company with two colleagues from IBM. I founded IntegrityNext, and so my first role was really to understand how we can bring sustainability into this function, and so we built this ESG and sustainability background. So it was always my role, my profession to gather which standards are there, which new regulations do come up, and how we bring this on the platform. Because this IntegrityNext platform is really a platform where you have all the legislation already embedded, so that companies can start right away. So when they log in and when they have a contract on IntegrityNext, they can start right away. They don't have to think about processes and standards and how to comply with the legislation. It's all in there. So it was really the job to bring that onto the platform, so it's not an empty app. And so sustainable and ESG became one of my core topics. And I think this is how I then went into the role of not only being the chief customer officer, but also filling the role of a chief sustainability officer.
I think what you say is really interesting, because you say in Germany, we say in procurement is the profit. I think that's a loose translation. And you would maybe even say in procurement is also, or procurement serves purpose. So whatever you buy, how you work with your supply chain, it in the way helps to keep all of the promises and needs to serve sustainability issues. Is that sort of a good summary?
Absolutely. And I know that saying. I think when I started in procurement, I saw that. So there is some books out there talking about exactly that. And right, I think it did change quite a bit, or it's kind of a new area to that. So I still remember when I started talking to procurement officers when we founded IntegrityNext, many of them said, Nick, wow, I mean, I never decided for a supplier because of sustainability. I look at cost, quality, on-time delivery. Yeah. That's what we're looking at, right? So not sustainability. And that was a CPO from an automotive company. But it changed dramatically in the last couple of years. So I think it's really like you said. So it's not only the profit or cost reduction is in procurement, it's also procurement with purpose.
Maybe there's the new 3 Ps we can somehow put together. I think you say car companies, and I had one, when I speak to a couple of CSOs, one conversation was really striking with me, and they said, Harald, I cannot join an event right now. I'm so busy. We are a supplier to a car manufacturer, like a car OEM, as they say. And we, as a supplier, we have 40,000 suppliers. And I now have to make sure that every screw we get from, southern Bavaria, and every little cable we get from a country far away on the other side of the world, each of these two suppliers out of 40,000, each of them have to do their ESG compliance and give me data. And so I'm busy for the next couple of years. That's one slice of, let's say, my little experience, but you must have stories out there where you have vast amounts of numbers of your partners who are then having suppliers. Can you maybe give us a couple of big numbers on your way, how you achieve your goals, and maybe some success stories around big numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. It is as you said. So on our platform, we have the small and mid-sized companies, we have the larger corporations, and the super large enterprises. So it really ranges from, let's say, typically it starts with a couple thousand, typically, suppliers. Only few industries and very small companies have like a couple of hundred, right? But really a couple thousand, typically a couple of 10,000. And we also have customers with a 6-digit number of accounts payable records. Yeah. So speaking in the procurement language. So this is really a challenge. And what we observe is it doesn't matter if it is 5,000 or 50,000. This is typically adopted to the size and the business of that customer. And it's always a challenge, because if you're a small company and you have 5,000 suppliers, but maybe let's say 3-5 people in procurement, right? Then it is a challenge. And if you're a large corporation with 50 to 100,000 suppliers and you have, 20, 25, 30 people in your procurement, then it's also a challenge. This is, by the way, also kind of the justification for our own company. Yeah. So what we understood is, if you want to do sustainable procurement, then you can't just focus on, let's say, like Pareto, the top 20% of your suppliers that have 80% of your spend volume behind it, maybe some strategically important suppliers. If you do so, and in real life, if you look behind the scenes, it's more like 5 to 10%, to be honest, in most companies. So this is what procurement organizations tend to do. They really focus on those most important suppliers and making sure that they have the contracts in place in the right way. They look at the quality and so on. But this doesn't work in sustainability. I mean, you could harm people in other geographies like the Global South, and you can also have a huge environmental impact with a supplier where you only spend some couple thousand euros, right? So this doesn't make a difference between larger or smaller companies. So this is why also most legislators force companies to look into this very broad supply base, and also looking into the deep supply chains, right? They're deep and international typically. And this is then a huge challenge for organizations, and the reason why you should utilize technology to actually get your arms around this and do procurement with purpose.
One follow-up question, because before we go into more the role of the CSO staying with the company, there are multiple software companies helping people in supply chains or working on these. I mean, it's a huge challenge, and the bureaucracy / the policies, maybe in a positive way, are still not stopping. There's more coming. There's more people have to comply from January onwards with the new EU regulations, who tend to get smaller companies and have maybe smaller teams. Now, how would you... Is there like a distinguishing factor what you focused on specifically with IntegrityNext, where you say, oh, we have a very unique position here because that's our sweet spot, a USP?
Well, so it's definitely the supply chain. And I think supply chain is key when it comes to sustainable economy. Yeah, because if you think of the example, the carbon footprint. So if companies need to reduce their carbon footprint, then they can't ignore the supply chain, because for most industries, the vast majority of the emissions come out of the upstream supply chain. So if you take your smartphone, probably 80% of the emissions associated to that platform doesn't come from the logo, the OEM that you see on your smartphone. Yeah, it really comes from the producers that produce the display and the chassis and everything. So this is why you can't ignore it. And also when it comes to not only carbon footprint, but human rights aspect, like child labor, modern slavery. I mean, today we have more slaves on the globe than ever before. So over 27 something million slaves on the world. You can't imagine this number, right?
Wow.
And this typically doesn't happen in front of your door. So it's not if you have a company in Germany or in the US, you probably don't have the slaves in your own organization or at your direct supplier. It's typically pretty much further down in the supply chain. So this is why companies need to care about this. And I think this is also for us the biggest leverage achievement, so that since we started in 2016 with our platform, that we now have over 2 million players in each and every country of the world on that platform. So this is kind of a huge treasure and network that helps to get the arms around these challenges. And I think that's probably one of our biggest achievements so far. And I can say I'm proud of that.
Yeah, of course. course.
Yeah.
You also have a conference coming up in October in Munich where you celebrate and you give insights together with other speakers. So that's really, I'm looking forward to that. Now, you already said 2016, you started, you're a co-founder. What are maybe, going back to your role, what are maybe some of the, bigger achievements or initiatives that you're proud of in that area?
Where we are today, so starting from 2016, where sustainability for most companies was more like a nice to have. Yeah. So if you like nice furniture or not, I mean, this is kind of a nice to have. Yeah. So it's I compare it like this. So if you're not a company but a private person, then you understand. Okay, do I furnish my house nicely or not? It doesn't make a huge difference, but yeah. So this was how it was at that time for most companies. Some, especially family-owned businesses and very large companies, looked at it already. Yeah, for own interest, for maybe a competitive advantage reason, for the reason that stakeholders looked at them. But it was mainly like this. So coming from this kind of situation to now having like 2 million companies on that platform, I think that's probably our biggest achievement for us as a company, for me as a CSO in our organization. But of course, also, I mean, then there is also this other side internally. Yeah, I mean, we also want to be a sustainable company ourselves. So since many years, we already, even if we're small, we look at our carbon footprint. So we let other specialists measure our carbon footprint, and we look at how we can be part of this reduction of our carbon footprint, which is not so easy, by the way. I mean, if you are in a hyper growth, yeah, I would say we're from a startup to a scale up now, and that means you grow by 100% every year. So this also means you have additional people on board. You have people, so not only the offices, but also, we try to reduce travel and these things. There is hardware in the background. Our customers use our application on their computers, which needs energy. So we really look at all these components, and if you grow and increase in that space so heavily, then at the same time reducing emissions is kind of a challenge. So this is really something that we're looking at, and I think that's also some of the key topics we're dedicating to. And then when you grow as a company, you more look also at business ethics. You have to have a code of ethics, a code of conduct. You do train your own people on environmental aspects and social aspects. We're actually pretty international and colored in our own organization. So you have to take care of that. Yeah. So this was really kind of a learning when you grow from a startup into a little bit bigger organization with a couple hundred people. Then it's really, this changes and you need to take care of that. So I think these were the more internal achievements that we took care of.
Great. Now, speaking about challenges that you also mentioned, what is maybe some of the challenges you had along the way in your role?
If you are a founder, then the beginning of that startup is still in good memory. And as I said, at the point in time when we founded IntegrityNext, we saw that relationship between supply chain procurement and sustainability in the economy. But this doesn't necessarily mean that you have the idea at the right point in time. And it felt like we were a little bit ahead of that wave. And I mean, this is a super critical situation for a startup. So, I mean, you have to survive as a company. And a little story around this. I think this is, that was, we coming out of procurement, I knew that what was important for procurement and supply chain functions, especially in procurement. So, for example, when you onboard new suppliers, procurement always needs new suppliers. to replace others, to bring more innovation in it, or making sure that you get the right amount of materials. You have to qualify companies to become a supplier. You have to onboard them, and which was in 2016. It was very important to look at also compliance aspects, like looking at sanction lists, looking at anti-bribery, anti-corruption, the GDPR. So data protection came up at that point in time. So that was one of the key aspects that procurement organizations had to take care of when they engaged with new suppliers. And what we did was a little trick. So we served this aspect. We brought many of these more, let's say, hardcore compliance aspects onto our platform, but we made the core sustainability aspects a mandatory part of that. So everyone who wanted to check compliance with their suppliers had to have environmental protection, human rights and labor, supply chain responsibility, health and safety aspects. So these four as a mandatory part. And over the course of a couple of very few years, actually, we gathered this, let's say, critical treasure, this critical amount of data about sustainability. And I think this is how we managed it to grow as a company in a time where sustainability wasn't that big already, and also gain this critical mass of companies being part of this network and being part of this solution.
It's funny. Always it reminds me, obviously, that in the startup world, you always hack your way to the next level. And if you started at 16, there was COVID in between. All these different stories make you wonder. Once you're here, and now you're starting an office in the USA, and there's a lot of things in the growing phase. But yeah, you remember some of these fun times. So.
Absolutely. But there was COVID, you said that. So when we started growing, we thought, okay, next year is going to be, so 2020 is going to be the year of sustainability. And then that was the year of COVID, right? Yeah. So, of course, these kind of things came across. Nevertheless, that wasn't the biggest challenge. Also, the war, then maybe no one did know, okay, what happens now? And typically companies tend to freeze their IT budgets or budgets for things that are not the most important thing to survive as a company. They freeze those budgets. Nevertheless, actually, I stick with it. The most challenging part was really in the beginning, when sustainability wasn't on top or even not on the agenda of CEOs. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So how to bring sustainability into companies, into their procedures and policies if it's not top of mind. I think that was still the biggest challenge.
Now, you speak with a lot of CSOs. How do you see the role of the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer, evolve over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, especially because the role of the CSO doesn't exist for that long, right? Yeah, I think this entire space of sustainability is kind of on the radar since many years, but it really grew up to an adult within the last 2 to 3 years very, very heavily. Yeah, and most CSO probably are in their role since 2 to 3 years. Only some organizations started with that pretty early. I think it is absolutely a key role in organizations, especially because many functions are involved in the journey when it comes to a more sustainable business. Yeah, it's not just having the central role. So in some companies, procurement is, or most companies, procurement is the central role. But also in ours, it's the customers. In others, it's more like a financial aspect, right? So I think it is a key role to connect the dots between the different functions for the sake of more sustainable business. So this is why it is important, and I'm glad to see that more and more CSOs are in the organizations. I have heard this question about, can the CSO be the next CEO, right?
Yes.
Also kind of this. I don't think so, to be honest. I don't think that this is going to be the journey. Yeah, I mean, companies need to be businesses and have their business, and probably that's not it. But I think what will happen, and I would be glad if it happens over the next few years, that it gets broader acceptance in the businesses. So, I mean, we see more and more CSOs, but still it's only a certain percentage of the companies that have a CSO or a lookalike role. Yeah. But I think this will change. It will not go away. And I think this is kind of the development over the next few years.
Yeah, there's at least one famous, I think, journey from a CSO to CEO at H&M. So I guess there was business acumen involved as well. And in addition to the CSO role, I think, Sandrine Dixon de Clercq from the Club of Rome, she is a very big proponent and saying this could be the person, because if she is not only running sustainability, or if you are running sustainability, you will really have a broad view on the whole company, because it has to start from, as you say, purchasing and innovation and financial aspects and reporting aspects. So you're digging into the whole overview. And in most roles, or in some roles at least, you also have to go into more strategic decisions, because, well, maybe you have to drop let's say a product, and or again, with innovation, come into new levels. So I still think there's maybe some hope that some of these people might grow up in this direction. But maybe from your point of view, what are some of the characteristics in the role of a CSO which are helpful in a job like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this H&M is a great example, and the persons behind these roles. I really think you have to understand both, right? You have to understand sustainability, but also the business, because you can't see that separately. Same with us. So when we're from procurement and sustainability, so we understand the processes there. And I think it's always to understand, how can I bring sustainability into that process? How can I make it part of that, and not disturb the original process, the original intent too much? It should be an incremental part, and the best would be if it serves this process and the goal, right? So if you can benefit from sustainability efforts, I think then it's even better. And this is something that a CSO should have in her DNA, right? So to really combine the business case, the business function with the sustainability aspect. And I think this is also the reason why I see so many C+ roles, so like mine. So I know many examples of people in CSO roles which actually also have another C-level role, or come from that role, or know their company very well, and they're not completely new to that business, to that company, and then step in as a CSO. This is probably less effective if you do it this way.
Yeah. If there's a lot of people who have to get into this role, as we know, with new reportings coming in. There's either younger people or people within the organization already who say, okay, let me maybe look into the other department where sustainability is happening. What would you say to somebody who's starting new or looking at this career? What are maybe some, things people overlook, or what is exciting about it? What should they consider in looking to start maybe a career as a chief sustainability officer?
Mm. So maybe let me build on what I just said. So given the fact that it is super important to have both, to have an understanding for the business and also having an understanding for sustainability and combine it. So if you're super new as a CSO in a new organization, then I think the key is then to really connect with the different functions and understand how the business of that company works, to understand how can I bring sustainability into my organization. That's already pretty broad. So the first aspect should really be to understand, where does my company have an impact? So what are the material aspects that I can consider? Is it carbon footprint? Is it child labor? Is it equality? Well, what is it? Is it hazardous substances because I'm in the chemical industry? So I really need to understand where I have the biggest impact and what's material for my organization, and then look at where this originates from, which functions are responsible for that, and connect with those, because you can't do sustainability in your single rooms alone, right? So you have to engage them. So I think that would be my approach if I come to a new organization as a CSO.
Nick, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing overnight within your company, your sector, what is one thing that could maybe be magically renewed?
Yeah, that's a good question. The magic wand. So, I mean, what I observe when I look at especially the regulatory landscape for companies, I think this is something I would try and change with a magic wand. So what I really see is that there is this, and it feels for companies, I think it feels like a rising tide of regulation. So within month or very few years, there's a lot of things to consider on the national area, also internationally. And this is a huge challenge for companies. And I think that we would be able to even go faster if there would be a better alignment between the legislator and the economy. And I don't mean this in a kind of a lobbyism way. Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, of course, there is this kind of conversation, but when I look what comes up and then you do a back and forth, currently we see, for example, a discussion around the German Supply Chain Act and the CSDDD, and maybe pause it for a certain time or combine the efforts of reporting on both aspects. So this is, on the one hand, these are good thoughts, but if politicians, the legislators, and the economy would align better, then I think this would help to even speed up. Because if you do it back and forth, then companies concentrate on the one thing and they start with that, and then there is, we want to do it much better for you, much easier. But we're there yet, so why should I step back now? Or could have you told me earlier? Yeah, or I mean, if these special functions like procurement are important, then why not integrate specialists from the economy, from the procurement function, into how to make this act, how to create it? And then I think there would be a better and, at the end, faster and more effectful approach. I think this would be kind of the magic wand I would use to bring these people come together and talk before they act. Yeah, and then act aligned in an aligned way.
That's great. I think you're right. Policies, I would secure this year is not only big in policies and how will this change on an international level. Obviously, politics, all these elections and everything around it. It's very complex. And maybe there's another topic we can discuss at another time, where European legacy, American, Pan-Asia, you're on a global level. So let's dig deeper on this another time. For now, whoever wants to know a little bit more about Nick, please also read his essay in our book, Leadership for Sustainable Futures. And I'm really thankful, Nick, for your time. I see you in Munich for Explore. And thank you for the time to being on the CSO Impact Podcast.
Thank you very much, Harald, for having me. See you soon.
See you.